As a writer and a writing coach, I have a pretty shameful secret. Well, I have several shameful secrets, but this is one of the ones that really preoccupies me. And that is that I have a few writers that I have tried to help, and I was never able to get them to finish their story or publish their book. I know. And here's another ugly truth is that sometimes I feel that I'm not writing as much as I should be, or I feel that I'm not promoting my work or publishing that book that I know I have inside me. Even though you see me out there as a writing coach and as an author, you see me producing things, publishing things, but believe me, I could and maybe I should be doing more. I feel a little bit guilty about it. And this isn't a contest. I think that one author's super productivity is another author's slacking. There's no shame to either level. None of this is a race. We're all on our own path. But I think that in every single case, if you wanted to be a writer and you are literally preventing yourself from doing that due to resistance, that is a failure. And when it comes to me trying to help other writers as a writing coach and not seeing them do the work that I wish they would do, that feels like a failure to me as well. So because of this, I've been much more invested than most, I would say, in trying to understand what exactly resistance is. Because that's what the name this thing has. It's resistance. It was given to it by, I believe, Stephen Pressfield, who was the first to really name that thing resistance. And we've all probably felt that in our creative lives. Whether you're a painter, whether you're a writer, any of those things, we all have the resistance to doing the creative work. And I have to say, it's pretty interesting. I was just chatting with a writer client the other day who was telling me how sometimes when she's resisting her writing work, which is really her true life's passion, she'll just stop and she'll paint something. Because when she paints something, she can get it all onto the canvas and she feels like she's actually finishing something, which when you're writing something, it's such a long-term thing that it's only too easy to start making some excuses. So that's one of the pieces, I think, of this resistance puzzle, which is that writing is work and it is such hard work so that any doubt that you have, you give it more weight because this stuff is hard. It's harder than most things. So any kind of excuse starts to feel like a pretty attractive alternative to actually pushing through. And also, writing a book is scary. So we're going to be talking today about this resistance thing, about how this resistance thing affects us, how it prevents us from writing, publishing, promoting our books. And of course, I'm going to be talking about some strategies for how to try to understand resistance, because I think that understanding it is probably the thing that is going to actually move the needle most, right? Understanding it and coming up with some strategies for how to either work through it, if that's the wise thing, or how to make it dissipate. I don't know. We shall see how all of that works, because I think that some of our first reactions or some of the reflexes we have when it comes to how to deal with resistance, they actually could do more damage than good. So that's going to be really important today on today's episode of the How to Be an Author podcast. I think I really need to dispel some of the resistance myths. When you're feeling resistance, it's not because you're lazy. It's not because you don't really want to do this, but there is this important thing that not many people address. That is that you should actually listen to that resistance and understand where it's coming from and why it's there. I think that's really important. Stephen Pressfield basically says, resistance it comes after the dream, and the more resistance you're feeling, the bigger the dream is in your heart. Sure, but does that make you feel better? It doesn't make me feel better, and it certainly does not help me to get rid of my resistance. So let's get started on talking about this issue of resistance and how it affects writers and how to get past it. If you're a writer dreaming of becoming a successful author, join me, writing coach Karena Akhavein, on the How to Be an Author podcast, your weekly source for writing information, inspiration, and motivation. Welcome back to the How to Be an Author podcast. Today we're talking all about resistance. Resistance is that thing when your motivation basically fails you. Even though you really want to be a writer and you dream of being a successful writer on top of that, and for some reason you're just stuck. What does this mean? What does it mean if you want to do something, but you're just not doing it? Does it mean that it's not meant to be? Some of us also have an extra layer on top of the regular resistance, which is we have undiagnosed ADHD or some other neurodivergence. And this is something that has happened to me. And sometimes I find ways to push past my ADHD or to find techniques that work to kind of capitalize on the advantages that I have as an ADHD writer and try to sneak around and write when I'm feeling like it. And all those things are great, but sometimes it feels like it's not enough. So let's talk about some of the sources of this lack of motivation or the sources of this resistance. And by the way, if you are a member of the Writing Coach on Demand program that I offer on my website, creativeandwritingcoach.com, you're going to be getting bonus materials that are really going to walk you through a kind of fantastic method for addressing this kind of resistance head on. And you're also going to get worksheets and some other very precious tools, including a roadmap to success that is definitely going to help you to move past that resistance. So if you're not a member of the Writing Coach on Demand program yet, you should definitely sign up. It's less than $1 a day and is going to get you so many things, including the bonus materials and office hours and 20% off of every single thing on the site and motivation and all kinds of stuff besides. So go check that out. But let's talk about some of the sources of lack of motivation as a writer. So I think that it's a lot more than just the more rigid definition of what Stephen Pressfield means when he talks about resistance. I think, for example, one of the things that we have as writers is we have exhaustion. We're tired because we have lives, we have families, we have jobs, we have to move around in this world, and then we have to have the energy and the psychological strength and the momentum and the inspiration to keep writing, which is a really hard job. And some of us really push through that exhaustion to the point where it's not super good for us. So exhaustion is major. I know for me, I'm a really bad sleeper, and I've started doing sleep hypnosis to try to sleep better. And it also has a great byproduct that it's a little bit like meditation. I think that those things can really help you when you're exhausted. But I think that when you're exhausted, pushing through just leads to burnout. So listen to yourself. If you're too tired to write, it could be depression, of course, and that's something important to know. It could be anxiety, which many of us experience. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. But it could be just run-of-the-mill exhaustion, just plain old fatigue. And that's something that can absolutely be addressed. I think there's no shame in taking a rest. So let's talk about this anxiety thing too, because when you're writing a book, you're giving yourself so many more expectations than would be on you if you weren't writing a book. You're doing something where people are going to judge you. You have to put yourself out there. You have to do extra work. You're doing all of these things for the simple privilege of maybe being completely torn apart by critics, by beta readers, by editors. I know so many writers who come to me after an editor absolutely destroyed their ego and destroyed their confidence. And now they're feeling anxious. They're almost scared to tell me about their book because they've been so hurt and now they have a hard time moving forward. I get it. That's something where I've been really working hard to find the positive things in every writer's voice. And let me tell you something super important. There is something that is extraordinary about the writing of every single writer. Even the crappiest writer has moments of genius and brilliance. And that is something that you need to know. Even if you think your writing sucks right now, the fact that you want to be a writer means that somewhere in the back of your mind, you know that you can do it. So know that even if you suck, call me up, call up another writing coach, but especially me. I will find the thing that makes you shine. I will find the thing that makes you special. I will find the thing that if you listen to yourself and express yourself in that authentic voice, you're going to find a reader who's going to be so touched by your work. I know also many times we have this, anger, we have our ego kind of fighting and comparing us to others, comparing us to where we think we should be. So we either compare ourselves to another writer that we hold up as the symbol of success and maybe success ill-gotten, or we look at the writer we wish we were and we get pissed off. And that kind of divide, that cognitive disconnect between who we wish we were and who we are, that gets your resistance right up. That's the problem. Because guilting ourselves into writing our book or writing a certain kind of book, that's definitely not going to help, right? Many of us have this issue that we have too many ideas or not enough ideas, or maybe they're not the wrong kind of ideas. And we're just fighting with all these ideas, but that's just a symptom of not being able to choose or commit. That's something where we're like, oh, I never have enough ideas. You do have ideas. It's just that you're not listening to yourself. You're not giving those ideas any weight. So a little quick piece of advice that I would give you is that the second you have an idea, give it weight, give it importance, jot it down in your notes on your phone or in a notebook, and save those ideas for a rainy day. Your ideas do matter. And believe me, you have more than you think. That's the thing. I think many times when we have this resistance or when we're not doing what we think we're supposed to be doing, we're actually not listening to ourselves. And this is kind of the most crucial message for today. I think that sometimes when we have resistance, it's because we secretly know that there's a problem. We wouldn't be having resistance if everything was hunky-dory, right? If everything was super awesome, if you were exactly where you were supposed to be and doing the things you were supposed to do and aligned exactly with your purpose in life and your story and your voice, would you have resistance? You absolutely would not. Because you wouldn't be scared because you would know that this is the story you were meant to tell and that only you can tell that story. So that would banish a lot of these self-censoring activities that we do or these self-sabotaging activities that we do. So here are some of the things that you might be kind of not listening to, or you might be trying to sweep under the rug, but you know they're there and they're causing resistance. It's time for some radical honesty. And again, if you want to check out the Writing Coach on Demand program, you would have a whole worksheet where you are going to be able to work through these issues. It's kind of going to be the best dollar a day you ever spent, because this is going to help you to stop wasting time on your writing career. Literally, when you write a book, the more books you write, the more chances you have to sell more books. So if you are not writing all the books you're meant to write, you're literally leaving a potentially lucrative career by the wayside. Think about that. You worry about wasting time, but really, you're wasting time agonizing over whether you should or should not write something. So let's get this fixed and let's get that motivation flowing, because it's important. I want to see you succeed in this. I think you'll feel so much better, and you'll feel like when you're productive, creative, there's nothing better on this planet. So I'm saying that if you're feeling that there's something wrong, right? You're not aligned with what you're writing. You're feeling like you maybe should be writing something, but you're looking like you're writing something different. That's a huge problem. Many authors feel like, oh my God, I just want to write romance, or I want to write fantasy. And it's embarrassing because I want to write like a literary fiction, because if my mom reads my thing, she's going to think that she totally, wasted her time raising me because I'm writing something that's, fan fiction or that's not intellectual enough. Stop it. If you love writing something that is, quote, not intellectual, but it just makes your heart sing and you have so much fun doing it, banish the guilt. Just do it. This is what you're meant to do for now, right? Another issue that happens is that you secretly know there's kind of something wrong with your story. I have so many writing clients, probably the majority of my writing clients get stuck because they have all of these different parts they want to put into their story, or they want to make it into a series, and they're trying to shove everything in there. And they know darn well that their story isn't working. They know darn well that they have too many characters or a convoluted storyline, or that it's kind of illegible, hard to understand. And they're shooting themselves in the foot because they're like, oh, I did so much work writing this. I feel like it's wasted if I take it out. But here's the thing, it's more completely wasted if you don't take it out, and no one really gets to enjoy your story because you're never going to finish it, or it's not really readable. And this is a message that some writers, it's a revelation for them when I share this message, but some writers get kind of frustrated. If your story is not readable, it's still a story. It's still something that you wrote, and I commend you for writing it. But if it's not readable, it's not going to be seen by very many readers. And I feel like part of the purpose of it is not there. So if you're writing a story like that and you don't want to change it, let's look at other ways of telling that story that are not in book form, or different ways of sharing it that are going to be more digestible for others, unless you've really come to grips with the fact that you're writing just for yourself, which is totally fine, but just be okay with that. Then don't look at another writer who's commercially successful and hate them because they're commercially successful. Guess what? They wrote a story that was readable. So sometimes there's that tough love that I have to give my writers where I'm like, listen, your writing's beautiful, but it's not readable in this form. Can we make this story flow better? Can we fix this plot? Can we fix these steps so that the journey of your characters becomes really clear, and that a reader is going to get really fascinated with them and really attached to them and want to know what's going on? That's what's going to make your story flow and work and have a reader. So one of those big forms of resistance is like you don't have that much clarity on your story. I'll ask people, say, okay, can you give me what happens in your story in a really quick synopsis? And some writers fight me. They're like, you just have to read it. Like, I'm not reading 500 pages that I can't even tell what the story is about. You have to tell me what your story is about, because you probably don't know what your story is about. And to those writers, I'll usually say, hey, create an outline from what you've written. And again, I'll have some writers say like, oh, but that's going to take me a long time, and I already wrote the story. Why don't you just, nope. Again, it's going to take you less than an hour to create a simple outline from your story as written, just from flipping through every scene and giving me the 5 W's of who, what, why, where, when the scene is about. And then you're going to look at that, and half the reason there's resistance to doing that outline, I know what it is. It's because the writer knows their story is convoluted. They know there's no clarity. They know there's some missing parts. They know there's something wrong. And so there's no problem with looking back and going, okay, I need to fix this. Once you fix it, I'll bet you the motivation comes back. So that's something that's really crucial. So for those of you who think, oh, doing some of these things is a waste of time, oh, baby, you don't see the time that's running out. I know that our lives feel like they're going to go on forever, but they don't. Our time is running out every day. So if you're wasting time by being stuck instead of wanting to waste a single hour of time that is not really a waste, I think you're looking at wasting time the wrong way. But I get it. You're scared. Fear is literally one of the biggest sources of resistance. And in fact, I would say that maybe resistance is a form of fear. We are scared of failing. We are scared of succeeding. We are scared of our story not being good enough. We're scared of, having too many steps that we don't know what it's supposed to be. We're scared of falling short. We're scared of wasting time. We're scared of so many things. And all of those things are really, really normal. So one of these big tips on starting to rebuild that momentum that's going to take us out of resistance without just trying to use momentum and push through and burn out, it's really knowing where we're going and knowing why we're doing this thing and knowing all those steps, taking out the mystery. I know that so many writers tell me, I don't like to write with an outline because I like to write by the seat of my pants. The minute I know what's going on, it's not exciting anymore. You know what? That's fine for the first draft. But after that, how do you keep like excited about your book? How do you keep going? You're going to have to find some other kind of motivation, my friend. So that's really crucial. Too many times we tell ourselves a lie to try to avoid doing the things that we know are actually going to help us to overcome this resistance, because the next step is also unknown and it's also scary. So that's a really important thing to be radically honest with yourself about. And I've mentioned momentum a few times in this podcast episode. Momentum is our friend. When you're chugging along, it's hard to stop. And that's good, right? So it's normal to want to slow down once in a while. I mean, I know that at first when your idea is all brand new and shiny and pretty, and once the shine wears off or once the honeymoon is over, you're going to be like, okay, wait, this is not as fun. But if you have momentum, you have a little bit of protection against grinding to a halt. But here's the other side of that coin, is that once you stop, it's like going to the gym. How hard is it to start again? Oh, it's damn hard. And this is something where a lot of writers or writing coaches will recommend that 5-second rule. I totally hate it, but I get how it works. Here's how it works. At the moment where you're feeling the most resistance, where you're most saying, oh my God, I don't want to write, I don't want to do any of this, that's when you count to 5 and you just start writing. I know it's really hard. If you can actually motivate to do that, if you can be like, that's it, this is really rock bottom where I feel like writing the least, and I'm going to count to 5 and I'm going to do this thing, bravo. Kudos to you if you can do that. For me, I mean, I have tried and tried again. I literally read that whole book about how to use the 5-second rule, all of that good stuff. I have a hard time. But this is the interesting thing. There are a million different ways to deal with these issues. And really, listening to this podcast is going to help you to see that it's not one size fits all. It's not one type of Band-Aid that I can give you to fix this issue. It really takes listening to yourself and trying to figure out the source of your resistance so that you can start to address it for yourself personally, right? We're all different. So one of the other big sources of this resistance comes from writers who are super ambitious. They make this thing too scary for themselves. And I talked about how fear equals resistance. So if you're too super ambitious, if you're like, I have to write the great American novel and it has to be beautiful and poetic with lovable characters, it needs to be a bestseller, it needs to be so good, lower your standards. Give yourself permission to write the crappiest rough draft ever. And this is one of those huge reasons why I tell so many of my writers to do dictation for their first rough draft, if at all possible, which I know sometimes it's hard for some of us if we have an accent or if we have, some kind of processing difference where we have a hard time really managing to imagine scenes and dictate them. I get that. But dictating is one of my secret weapons for being able to lower that bar and avoid the self-editing that happens to so many of us. So definitely try to see if you're able to lower your standards. Don't be like, I need to write the best book ever. Just be like, I want to finish a book, right? But remember that motivating the wrong way, just like sheer willpower, just like dieting, that's not going to help. You need to envision what it is that you really want and why, and see what your life is going to be like once you've achieved that goal, instead of just being like, gotta do it or I'm a loser. If you're using shame and fear of failure or blaming yourself to motivate yourself, honestly, that's the wrong fuel for your creativity engine, baby. You are going to break down. So definitely keep in mind that you can't beat yourself up into doing this writing thing. That is definitely not what I'm asking you to do. That would be so counterproductive. So if you're really feeling terrible about being this unmotivated slob who's resisting writing at all costs, I think you need a rest break. I think you need an inspiration break. I think they're great. But here's the thing. Don't pick up your phone and start scrolling through Instagram. That's not really the type of break I'm talking about. I'm talking about intentional breaks, right? These are the breaks that feed you. These are the breaks that motivate you and that inspire you. So let me tell you, for me, what I do as a break. And breaks can look like anything. I have a writing client who does bicycling as her break. I have writing clients, as I was talking about, the one who paints a painting as her break. And I think that's wonderful. Breaks can be playing with your dog or walking on the beach. So for me, my break is I volunteer in a beautiful botanical garden near my house. And it only takes me like 15 minutes to get there. And I volunteer a couple times a week. I lead a tour. I'm basically docenting in this amazing garden that was started by this incredibly creative, visionary woman who was an opera singer, who was completely eccentric and cool. And every single time I'm in that garden, I challenge myself to see something new, think something new, say something new, just experience something new, use my imagination in new ways. I think all of that is so fun when you're taking one of those breaks that you're able to just look around and use that to feed your writing machine. I think that's really great. I would love to know from you. Reach out to me. Let me know what your best writing breaks are. Let me know how you refuel creatively. I am dying to know because I just love to see how other people are. Again, what is a great break to me might be a nightmare to you. So what works for you? I think that there are some wrong answers probably, but other than that, we're all different and we all have these different ways of doing it. Maybe you're going to get inspiration by asking people what they do as writing breaks and find something that works for you. It's super, super fun. So remember how I was saying that you can turn off the resistance for your first draft by giving yourself permission to suck, right? That's all hunky-dory, but then I did hint at the fact that once you start editing, then you're again back in the place where you were, where you're like, oh my God, this is no longer fun. I suck. And then you're blocked all over again. So let's rewind a little tiny bit and let's go back to the beginning where I was kind of saying, okay, resistance kind of blows, but it is trying to tell us something, right? Why would our brain be trying to keep us from doing the thing we're meant to do, right? One of the big tenets of my whole writing coaching thing is that I tell you that I really want you to learn to believe that you can do this thing, because if you don't believe fundamentally that you can write a book, your brain is going to do every single thing it can to keep you from doing it because it's protecting you from wasting your time. Remember, we talked about that time waste? Exactly. So we have to take this one step further though, because sometimes you're like, okay, yeah, no, I believe I can do it. No, you still can't though. Because if you have resistance, your brain is still trying to protect you. So what is it trying to protect you from? That's our next step. What is wrong? Where's the gap in, the whole process? Where's the problem? Where's that little stumbling block? Because there is one and there's a reason it's there. Your brain's not just some jerk trying to sabotage you every step of the way. So again, if you join Writing Coach on Demand, you're going to get access to the bonus materials for the podcast, which are going to help you to diagnose exactly what's wrong, and it's going to help you to do something about it. It's going to be some deep work. It might be a little painful, but it's going to help you so much. Because momentum is great, but if you don't dig deep at some point, you will lose that momentum. So if you're not in Writing Coach on Demand and you don't have $1 a day or less than $1 a day to spend on it, and you just believe you can do the work yourself, this is what you're going to do. You're just going to think about listening to yourself and telling yourself why, truly why, no shame involved. Why am I blocked? Am I aligned with my voice and with what kind of writer I'm really supposed to be? Am I trying to be a different kind of writer because of some kind of shame that I have, or some kind of comparison, or some kind of story or lie I'm telling myself? These are all really crucial questions to ask yourself as a writer. And I think that once you start doing that, you are going to be one step closer to figuring out why the resistance. And once you've figured that one out, you're going to start to figure out those techniques that are going to work for you personally to get rid of the resistance and to establish and maintain momentum when it comes to writing and publishing and promoting your book. This is my passion, guys. I know that I probably sound like I'm just ranting and raving and lecturing, but this is really the thing that made me become a writing coach in the first place. So I really appreciate your listening to this podcast. I look so forward to being with you next time on next week's episode, which is also going to be super useful. I tend to alternate between kind of technical writing things and then more mindset-y things. And I would love to hear from you on, what do you want to hear more of? What's going to help you more in your writing career? And if you at all can, circle over to the website and check out Writing Coach on Demand, because I would love to see you in office hours and troubleshoot with you and help you and, kind of carry you up in this whole journey of yours. This is what I live for. So thank you so much for joining me on the How to Be an Author podcast, and I will be with you next time. If you have any pressing writing-related questions or would like to be featured on the How to Be an Author podcast, please feel free to reach out on my website, creativeandwritingcoach.com.